Hello, my name's Katie Gillham and I'm the Head of Marine Ecosystems for NatureScot based up in Inverness. And I'm just going to give you a short presentation on some of the work that's going on through particularly MarPAMM and CMonitor in relation to the development of marine protected area management plans and recommendations. And I should say thank you to everybody that's listed on this slide for their help in pulling this presentation together. It's been a bit of a joint effort. So what I'm going to cover is just a bit about the MPA management plans and the marine protected areas that they relate to. And I'll go through that for both MarPAMM and CMonitor in terms of the things that we're aiming to deliver as part of these projects. And then I'll spend the rest of the presentation just giving you a bit of an update on progress on some of the work we've done to date in terms of working with stakeholders and looking at where we might go next. For MarPAMM, we have an action to produce 4 regional MPA management plans, and these are shown in the map on the left-hand side in the bright colours there. So they're for the Outer Hebrides, Argyll area, the North Coast to North Channel area, and County Down to County Louth. And there are also 2 site-specific management plans which were requested by stakeholders, so they're included in the work as well. Essentially why we decided to trial a regional approach is because that scale is often more relevant to the development of things like regional MPA management plans, and hopefully it forces us to actually think a little bit more strategically about marine protected areas rather than always thinking at them at the site level, with the aim that hopefully it will be easier to integrate any recommendations that come out for this process into the conversations that are going on to support wider marine management. The timelines that we're working to, basically just covering from the start of this year really through until almost the end of 2022. So far this year we've been working with stakeholders to agree the scope of the management plans, and there's been some work to also look at the benefits that stakeholders want to realise from marine protected areas. And for about the next year we'll be continuing to work with stakeholders to look at the agreed outcomes and the recommendations that they want to see for those marine protected areas in their region. Following that, there'll be public consultations so that a wider group of people can have a say on what they think the management plans should contain, and then there'll be consultation reports and hopefully the final management plans being published in August 2022. And I'll move on just to saying a little bit about CMonitor now. The focus for CMonitor is on 2 different species. We've got the flapper skate, which you can see there on the left-hand side, and there are 3 different areas that the management planning work is covering. And then we've also got focus on Atlantic salmon, and there are 2 different areas there which are the focus. There's also a slight difference in that whilst under MarPAMM there is a deliverable relating to management plans themselves, the focus under CMonitor is really to make sure that they're producing recommendations either for existing management plans or recommendations that relate to new management plans that might need to be developed. And this is a great summary of all the work that's going on under the Atlantic salmon work package. And what I've highlighted in red here is the work that relates to the management planning. So this year there's been good progress in creating a draft framework for the salmon management plans, and working groups have been set up and established. Next year there's going to be a shift to actually drafting the plans and the recommendations themselves. And in the last year there's going to be a focus then on actually completing the plans and getting them published. For common skate, you can see again I've highlighted the relevant recommendations there that are in red, and essentially it's making recommendations for the various different locations shown on the map before to look at how skate can best be managed in those areas. And again that's to be completed by the end of December 2022. This is just a very brief overview slide. I thought it would be interesting to see how many marine protected areas we could potentially be covering by these plans and the recommendations. It's probably a bit harder than you might think to add up how many marine protected areas there might be in one particular place. I'll give you an example. So in one location, you might have a national designation, and that might then be overlaid by an international designation. And so we tend to just count that as one sort of area rather than counting it twice. But essentially there's around about 90 MPAs that will be covered by the various different regional MPA management plans under MarPAMM, and then a further 5 relating to CMonitor. And just put a note in there as well that there's 7 further MPAs, mainly relating to mobile species that are under consideration for designation in Scotland. What I'm going to do for the rest of the presentation is just switch now to talking about stakeholder engagement. And this isn't a kind of comprehensive overview of everything that's been done in the projects, but I just wanted to pull out a few examples to give a flavour really for what the project officers have been involved with. So this shows some of the work that's been going on in Ireland and Northern Ireland, and it's been pretty essential over the last few months to make sure that we had a social media presence. So the project officers there developed an approach for Facebook, and there's a whole series of kind of programmed proactive posts that are put out, but it's also a forum where stakeholders can then start to ask questions and start to get involved in the debate and the discussions. So that's proving really successful now. And I just wanted to contrast with a slightly different approach in the Outer Hebrides. And give you one example where the project officer was trying to explore if we use some quite different approaches to the ones that we usually do for stakeholder meetings, would people respond to them differently? Would we have different types of conversations? So the example I wanted to highlight here is to do with the Hebridean International Film Festival. And essentially after the films in which the marine environment was a kind of a big part of them, whether there was a conservation message or whether it was more broadly to do with the sea, the project officer and other staff were then involved in conversations with people about what they wanted to see in terms of if they thought there were any improvements to marine management that might be needed. And it was really, really interesting. People were very willing to engage and wanted to get into sometimes much more detailed conversations than they might do at other meetings that we've set up previously. I've got just a couple of examples here on the governance side of things, and obviously setting up your governance arrangements is really key to actually making sure that you're providing opportunities for people to engage and that there's a transparent process there. So in Argyll, there's a kind of quite sort of formal steering group that has been set up, and different organisations and interest groups were asked to nominate representatives to sit on that group, with the idea that you had a broad range of interests represented, and it's quite a large steering group. But those those people on the steering group would then be liaising with others in their own organisations and in their own communities. Slightly different situation in the Outer Hebrides, where there's a much smaller working group with key sort of project partners, but a lot of the interaction has then happened through kind of workshops that are open to the public, or through existing groups. So, for example, through the inshore fishing group. And so, I think it's obviously worth mentioning that at the moment, obviously, all of the project officers are kind of taking stock and seeing what's the best thing to do in terms of really thinking through what the engagement is going to look like under continued COVID restrictions. Yeah, that's just really a work in progress. The next thing I wanted to just talk a little bit about was about the benefits work and some of the scoping work that's been done on the management plans. So this is an example of benefits mapping from Argyll. Essentially, it was working with the steering group, trying to look at what the overall objective might be, and there were a whole series of these different maps that were produced. But this was an objective thinking about, well, how do we want to improve management of the MPAs? And there was a process gone through looking at, well, what might the enablers be of those particular changes, and how would those changes lead to the benefits that people on the steering group wanted to see. So it came out as various different things were being highlighted. So, for example, promotion of existing management plans and new ones when they're produced, the importance of engaging marine users, and also things like the importance of using an ecosystem-based approach. In Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, they've produced a joint template to be used for the 2 regional MPA management plans there. And there's a little screen grab of the draft plan on the right-hand side. Essentially, the plan sort of takes you through in a really logical process, looking at what the legislative and management requirements are likely to be for the plans, looking at what the MPAs are and what features are that they contain in terms of habitats and species, looking at the threats and conflicts and doing some, really quite detailed analysis there, and then setting out the kind of overall management approach that's been developed with stakeholders, and how that all kind of fits together in the summary. So just to kind of wrap this up, what we're working towards in terms of MPA management plans, we've got the 4 regional plans and the 2 site-specific plans under MarPAMM, and under CMonitor, represented by the orange blobs on the diagram there on the right-hand side. We've got the plans that are, and the recommendations that are being produced for salmon and for flapper skate. The timescales are pretty closely aligned. We're having to produce the MarPAMM plans and get them published in the summer of 2022, and then the other plans from CMonitor are going to come through for the end of December 2022. So thank you very much for watching this presentation. I hope that's provided some useful background so that when you come to the discussion on the 24th of November at the actual webinar, you'll have a lot of the information about what we're already doing, and then we can really talk about how we can improve that, bring people's different experience into the discussions, and just come up with some ideas of kind of how we can make sure that we're all kind of joined up in taking the work forward and producing the best management plans that we can. Thank you very much.